Hey guys, and welcome. Welcome again to another edition of Career Corner, where I talk to and speak with opinion leaders, subject matter experts, and executives really involved in the hiring process to be able to bring you content about hiring, about career, about what people are looking for in a candidate, and some of the do's and don'ts in your candidacy. So I hope the first two episodes have been wonderful. Today I have a special guest who's a friend of mine. So let me introduce him. His name is Renaud Rodrigue, and he is the VP of Higher Education at one of the largest document management companies in the world, Rico. Hey, Renaud, how are you?
Hey, great, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully, sir. And by the way, guys, I know him as Rennie, so I'm going to be going back and forth with Rennie and Renaud, but same guy. It's not Bruce Willis, but you make your own determination. So before we get started, Rennie, obviously the most important thing is, how did your daughter do in her competition down in Orlando today?
Or this weekend? I wasn't even prepared for that question, but thanks for asking. She did great. She had a great time, and they performed. They were really happy with the performance. So
these are the finals of the collegiate dance and cheer that we oftentimes see on ESPN.
Yes, it is. Yep, and she competes for Penn State, Division 1A, and they did great. And
That's awesome.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for asking.
That's awesome. And another step before we get started, I will tell you, he is one of the best hockey players I've ever played against. I much prefer playing with him than against him, but he's still playing as I am. And you're still playing up in Michigan?
I sure am, yes.
And a competitive league, a lot of D1 players, some similar to yourself, right?
A lot of competitive players that, we're in the twilight of our careers. Let's put that.
I hear you, brother. I know it every time I step on the ice. So anyways, let's get started with what the audience came here for. If you first can talk to me briefly about you and your career progression and how you kind of got to this point in your career, that would be a wonderful starting point.
Interesting career and progression. Like many individuals, I graduated college and I began my search for my first job. And honestly, my objective was to find a job that I could determine, learn, understand, figure out what I really wanted to do, right? For a career. And interestingly enough, the first job I landed, which I guess my criteria was, where am I going to get training? Where am I going to improve my skills, figure out what it is I wanted to do? I had a general business degree. And with that, I found a great company that provided all those elements. And as a result, I landed in a medium-sized regional company, but through acquisition, eventually became part of a $20 billion global company, which ended up offering many opportunities and consistent opportunity to evolve my career without ever leaving the company.
One thing that you brought up, and I really appreciate that, is when you were starting your career, you made the conscious decision to go to a company where you could get training. And I think a lot of people, when they're coming out of college, young kids, really should adhere to that, right? That doesn't mean that you want to be in corporate America your whole life, right? You could be doing your entrepreneurial thing later in your life, whatever that is. But to be able to get good quality, solid training as a young adult must have been a wonderful experience for you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's one of the first lessons that I learned, right? And just reflecting back, and I probably didn't even realize it at the time. But one of the lessons I learned is, whatever job or position I've ever been in, right? One of the things that I've always asked myself is, what can I get from this experience? What can I get from this experience that will help me evolve to wherever it is that I want to go? And I probably wasn't consciously thinking of that in my first job, but through experience, I learned that's one of the most important elements, right? Is Not necessarily. I think a lot of people look for that perfect job. And to me, the definition of the perfect job is, what do I, as the employee, what I want to get out of it, and what responsibility do I put into getting that out of it, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting that, you're being very purposeful. And that, to me, again, is a sign of someone that has moved up a career nicely as opposed to haphazardly. Let me kind of go into another lane. You've certainly worked your way up, and I know that you've been a hiring manager. So talk to me a little bit about your history as a hiring manager, as a hiring influencer, and how that's kind of evolved over the years.
Right. So if I think about how long I've been in a hiring manager
role. Don't dwell on that too long, pal.
I won't. But it's been 20 plus years, and it's been at all different levels, right? Starting from an entry-level manager position, hiring entry-level employees, through middle management, through executive roles, where my role is different, right? In the first instance, I'm hiring entry-level people, which is very different than middle management, which is then again very different from maybe an executive role where I'm a 1 over or maybe a 2 over interview, or I'm interviewing senior level positions, which is a completely different process.
And I appreciate that, because the next question feeds right into it. Give me, maybe 2 or 3 of the most important traits that you're looking for when you are hiring. And if you can delineate that, break that down to entry level, because I'm sure that's going to be somewhat different than mid-management. That's going to be somewhat different from the executive suite. That would be really helpful.
Right. So, first and foremost, if I break down the 3 different positions, right, level of experience is obviously going to be a big differentiator from an entry-level position to middle management to an executive type role. So let's start with an entry level. Entry level is more about looking for an individual's ability to learn, willingness to learn, creativity, adaptability, because they probably don't have a lot of business or job experience. I'm looking for life experience. I'm looking for activities. I'm looking for personality traits. I'm looking for what's your DNA and what's your makeup. That's what you focus in and key into for entry level. Middle management, right? As you progress up, all of those things are still very important. Actually, probably more and more important in today's world, right? We're in this business climate of digital transformation, right? Is what we call it in my industry, and that just means that the pace of change and evolution in the business community is accelerating every single day. So the job that you're looking for today may not be around 5 years from now.
Right.
Or the job or career that you may end up in hasn't been created yet. Right. Or the one that you're in will go away. All of those elements. So I'm still looking for, in all levels, individuals that have the ability to adapt, the ability to evolve, the willingness, which means.
Now, can I stop you for a sec? How do you ask? What kind of questions do you try and engage them to try and understand that?
It's getting the candidate to storytell, right? I'm more interested in the how and the why versus the what.
So everyone listening, storytelling and providing examples really concretize your value. And, it's one thing to just say, I've done this, right? It's another thing to be able to share how you've done it, and just be prepared for those situational questions where you are really going to be talking about, like you said, really storytelling. So you've gone from entry level into mid-level. Is there anything that you look for now from folks that are at that senior or that executive level when you're interviewing them?
Yes. Senior level roles should absolutely have a much clearer more definitive understanding of what they're looking for, right? When you get into a senior level role, it's not about me finding the right candidate for my company or the candidate finding the right company for their career. It's about fit, right? And it's about mutual fit to the opportunity. And it's a candidate that is interviewing me to the same extent that I'm interviewing them, right? Because it's a partnership at that point. It's not a trial, right? And it's not me determining who I'm going to hire. It's me and the candidate determining, is this the right opportunity for both of us?
Right. Now, I appreciate that, and I always talk about that with my clients. I will certainly say that interview back and forth, right? Both parties interviewing, to me, really should be even at the entry level. Again, what I tell even those entry level folks is not every company is going to be the right company for you. And you need to come away from that interview knowing more about the company and about the role to be able to assess if that's a company or a role that you want to be a part of. Now, having said that, do you embrace at the entry level folks that are inquisitive, that are trying to learn more about the role, or do you just want them to kind of keep sharing their value?
Absolutely. And that's a great point. So I don't want to portray that it's not important at an entry level as well. In fact, I will tell you one of my staple, questions when I'm in a position of 1 over or 2 over for, say, an entry level role, and I'm not the hiring manager, right? I will typically always try to put the candidate at ease, right? And help them understand that I'm not the hiring manager, right? I'm not making the decision. So leverage the conversation with me to figure out, are we the right company for you, right? And I remind them that if the job doesn't work out, right, and it's not the right position for either one of us somewhere down the road in the future, well, that's just as much their responsibility as it is, ours as the company, right? So they need to be sure that we're the right organization for them, and therefore, what do they need to know? What is it that they need to know to make sure that we're in alignment with what they're looking for?
Right. I know that yours is a unique industry, and as most industries are, and I've gotten to know it somewhat. When things are good in the document management business, it's very much of hiring, and to the point that at the entry level, you almost overhire in order to understand that there's going to be fall off.
If you go back 10, 15 years, in particular sales environments, organizations were all about headcount, were all about ensuring coverage, and I guess you could interpret that as overstaffing, or it's somewhat staffing to the 80-20 rule, right? You're going to have 80% or 20% of your reps driving, the majority of your business, and 80% are probably going to be in this high turnover environment, right? So roll forward to today, business is changing so fast and so rapidly that the focus has to be on developing your people and moving them up through your organization and evolving versus constantly looking to hire, right, and to replace.
Well, let me ask you, and that leads me to my next question. What is the supply and demand of talent right now in your industry? Are you hiring? Are you, kind of purging and consolidating? What's going on?
Companies such as ours, we are constantly looking for talent. We're constantly looking for people that will help us evolve, that will help us grow, that will help us become the company that we aren't today, right?
And is that at all levels, even right today, that you're still looking for good folks at entry, at mid, and at the upper levels?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I would say this as a general, from my perspective, general statement. there are certainly industries and businesses that are in rapid growth, and there are other businesses and industries that are mature, right? And maybe eliminating certain positions, but companies that are eliminating certain positions are always creating new positions, right?
Okay.
And it might not be at the same pace, but there is always opportunity, especially in large organizations, there is always new opportunity.
How do you seek out and uncover top talent, I guess as a company, but maybe even as that might know your network? How do you go about finding, great talent?
Right. So, and you touched on an important element, which is networking. So, more and more, I find the importance of having a network, right? And when you're looking for talent, leveraging that network of individuals, as well as always be recruiting. All right. It doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing. I always look at, individuals that I'm either doing business with or that are serving me in some other industry or so on and so forth. And I'm constantly looking for talent. So, conversely, I would say to candidates, right, you're always interviewing. You always have to be aware that your next potential network individual or opportunity or whatnot could be the person you're speaking to.
What have been some of the mistakes you've made when hiring went the wrong way?
Right. So I would say that the biggest mistake is focusing on filling a job, right, versus focusing on finding the right candidate, right, which is very, very simple in its definition. But I would say I would say that that's probably the number one issue of hiring managers, right?
Okay.
And even candidates, right? We're anxious. As a candidate, you're anxious to get a job. As a hiring manager, you're anxious to fill a position, right? Because an open position creates stress, it creates anxiety, it creates maybe a lack of coverage, so on and so forth. So focusing on filling the job versus focusing on finding the right individual on both sides is the number one challenge and number one issue.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. What I tell people all the time is that, the hiring manager wants to like you.
Yes.
They come into the room wanting to like you because this isn't, the main part of their job description. Their main function is to manage folks and have productivity and reduce costs and create revenue or whatever. It's not hiring. They want to, when you sit in, you shouldn't feel intimidated because a good manager wants to get to know you, wants to like you because they want to put the offer to you and move on. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you think about it, most individuals that are in management, they are in management for the most part, right? Because they like managing people. They like being a leader. And therefore, and in today's world, I think being a leader is less important than, or I should say, being a leader, right, is more about creating followership than it is about getting people to do what you want them to do, right? It's getting people to want to be on board. It's getting people to want to be a part of your organization. It's getting people to want to drive towards your vision. And therefore, those types of individuals absolutely are looking for people that they can let. They want to like people. So you're right. You're absolutely right. It's not a situation where you need to feel intimidated. It's an opportunity to have a hiring manager understand who you are.
Well, unfortunately, there are organizations out there, and I've seen it, I've heard it. There are folks that, want to intimidate. They come in and it's I'm kind of better than you, and you tell me why you should be a part of my team because I'm great and I don't know who you are. And to me, when you get into that environment, people, that's probably not the environment you want to be a part of. So again, make sure you listen to those little voices in your head when you walk out saying, wow, I felt really bad in that interview. then that is probably going to be a situation. If you go to that company, you're going to be feeling bad in that role at times. And that's not what life is about.
So that's a great point. And I agree wholeheartedly. The one element, though, I would probably add, right, is don't assume that the interview style of whoever's interviewing you is the environment or culture of the company. Because a lot of interviewers, I hate to say it, but they lack, they're not necessarily great interviewers.
Right.
So they become somebody different, just like we become somebody different when we interview sometimes, right?
Or when we hit the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We're good people off the ice, and then when we get on the ice, we change.
That's a great analogy. It's just like a hockey player. We're really nice people when you meet us outside at a restaurant, maybe, or a social environment. But when you get on the ice, it's sort of like, who is that?
Yeah. I hear you, and I appreciate your saying that. I still feel that it's incumbent upon the organization to be able to, prep their interviewers properly enough not to have that intimidating style. But I get it, and I certainly understand your point.
Yeah, my only point is as a candidate, I would just say, if you find yourself in that situation, you're right. It might not be the right environment, right? And you got to recognize that. But maybe make an effort to seek through that, right? And ask questions yourself as to what type of culture is here, what's the environment, or even why not be. I say, and one of the qualities I look for transparency, and I look for real.
I love it, brother.
I look for, I want to know that if I hire you 6 months from now, or even 3 weeks from now, I'm going to be able to say, oh, this is the person I interviewed, right? Because a lot of times, 3 weeks, 6 months, or not a lot of times, but at times, a period of time goes by and you start asking yourself, where'd the person that I interviewed go, right?
Right.
So it's important to be real, right? And to get your conversation or your interview to a real conversation.
Absolutely.
Both sides.
Absolutely. So let's do the pivot.
Okay.
Talk to me a bit more about you as a former candidate and how you would prepare for high-level interviews, how you would, shine.
So what I've learned and the biggest difference between, 20 whatever years ago, a long time ago, and now is my preparation. Right? There's no reason why anyone should walk into any interview without having a really good understanding of the company, of the person you're interviewing with, of the opportunity, right? With social media, with all the tools that we have.
Right.
Totally agree. Being prepared is unbelievably important. And if you're interviewing internally, which I do, it's all the more important, right? To do your homework, to understand, to know who you're meeting with, so that you can get right to conversation and you can get right to what are the important elements to the interview versus spending a lot of time on basic information, right?
Well, that's interesting you say that, because most of the time when I talk about preparation, it's preparation for an interview with a company that you haven't been with. And, that is a totally different lane of preparation than what you just mentioned, which is something that I usually don't talk about, but should, about how you prepare internally to move up and how you learn more, I guess, about the department lead, about the team. But you have an in already, so you should almost be able to do more in-depth analysis and preparation. Would that be accurate?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say it leads back to an element that I left out, right? And this is an exercise I started doing many years ago, which is I force myself to update your resume at least every 6 months.
Wow.
Right? And it does a couple of things, right? And updating a resume should not occur, right, because you need to find a job.
Mhm.
Updating a resume is to me, it's a process of my own development and self-awareness, right? Because if you do it every 6 months, you're going to learn a few things. You're going to learn about, gee, I accomplished this, this, and this, right? Or maybe not enough has changed over 6 months, and it gives you a motivation, and it gives you a kick in the butt in terms of things that you need to do, right? So
Right.
updating your resume is a great exercise, and everyone should do it. I would say a minimum of every 6 months, right?
Interesting. Wonderful advice, Rennie. I appreciate that. Um, I'm sure people want to know how you got to this point in your career. And, obviously, I think it's shown that you've ascended nicely. And what are the 2 or 3 most important traits to be successful and continue to move up? And if you can, also kind of bring in to move up into a politically charged, large corporate environment.
Right. So, um, first and foremost, and we talked about it, right? It's the mentee mentor network. It's building relationships throughout your organization, from a 360 perspective, right? You need to have people that are above you, that know who you are, that know what you want to, what you're about and what you're trying to accomplish and where you want to go next, right? So they need to be your champions. Um, and then
Great
there's
word.
peers, right? And there's peers that need to be respect you, that there's a dual benefit to the relationship, right?
Kind of a
So
symbiotic relationship.
absolutely. So you're helping them, they're helping you. You're gaining respect and from the people around you that are in similar roles or at similar levels, and then you're helping people underneath you, right? And you're getting to know those people, and you're providing direction, and you're providing guidance, and so on and so forth. So that you're a well-respected individual from a 360 perspective within your organization. Individuals that are in that position, and that's what I learned. When I saw people that were successful, that's what they had, right? And that's what leaders are always looking for when they're looking for people to move up within an organization.
Not having that network, not having that mentor-mentee kind of symbiosis, if that's even a word. Do you think that hurt people that were kind of let go when there was restructuring going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when organizations go through, we'll call it restructure, but I, and going back to some of our earlier comments, right? Today's world is changing at an alarming rate. I mean, it just is.
Right.
I recently read that since the year 2000, I'm pretty sure this is accurate. Since the year 2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies are no longer around, right?
Wow.
And in the next 10 years, approximately the same amount of organizations will not make it due to lack of being able to transform and evolve and so on and so forth. So with
Right.
that being said, the companies that will survive and the companies that will thrive will look very different than they are today,
Mm-hmm.
which means the positions and the jobs and the individuals are going to look very different than they do today. They can be the same individuals, right? So they'll be the same individuals with the individuals that understand how to be adaptable, to constantly be learning, to
Right.
put themselves out there and make sure that not just their immediate supervisor and their immediate team members know who they are and what they do and their value, but make sure that other people around understand who they are and their value. Because while certain departments may change, go away, whatever, other departments will be created. Other
Right.
departments will grow. And everyone's always looking for talent, right? So if you're talented within a large organization, you're going to always have an option.
Well, let me ask you, because we talk about talented individuals, and we talk about also having that network and really how you almost need to have both. And, I would imagine that, and for lack of a better word, you have those that you see kind of move up, and the scuttlebutt at the coffee machine is, wow, that person is a kiss ass, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't seem genuine, as opposed to, I think what you're talking about is really creating genuine relationships that are very much a give and a take, as opposed to just someone trying to ingratiate themselves without having the bandwidth to be genuine. True?
Yes, absolutely true, and unbelievably great point, right? Um, Leadership will see through kiss ass very easily, right?
Right.
Networking, putting yourself out there, ensuring people know who you are, what your skills are, what your desires are, where you want to go, your capability, blah, blah, all those things, right? It's not tooting your horn,
Right.
right? And it's not kissing ass. It's it's putting yourself out there. It's being a team player. It's also challenging, and being sincere and open. If, gee, I'm struggling, right? Help me figure this out. Being open to um, your own development, right? And self-awareness. So being sincere, being genuine, um, is critical, and it's not just about trying to be liked, and it's not just about tooting your own horn. It's about being a team player, and it's about being engaged and involved.
I'm going to take another pivot. Are there any regrets that you have from having made, your movement up through an organization? Obviously, you've had an extremely successful career with one company, even though there were iterations of that company. But are there any regrets that you have professionally, personally, from how you made those maneuvers?
Part of me wants to say, right, is you can't really dwell on, or um, you can't really look at things as regrets, versus learning experience, right? So, which I think is a major difference. So, but they can be the same experience, right? So, first and foremost, I guess I would say I try to turn regrets into learning experience. Okay, what did I learn? What would I do differently? And how do I move forward, right, with what I just learned? So, um, yeah, did I get every position that I ever, desired to get? Did I get it when I desired to get it? No. In fact, I'll go back to the very first management job. I went into the interview thinking I was absolutely the top candidate because I was the top sales professional, and the job should be given to me if I so desired to want it, right? So I went. So I learned my very, very first invaluable lesson when I didn't get the job. I didn't even get a second interview. When the hiring manager told me, "You're not ready for this position yet," right? And that individual went on to become a very important mentor for me going forward, because I after I licked my wounds, I came back and said, okay, help me understand, right? And how do I learn from this? And I learned that I wasn't going into the position, right, with the right for the right reasons. I wasn't going into the position because I wanted it, because I was passionate about it, because I understood what it meant, and all of those very important reasons. I was going into it because I felt like I deserved it, right? And I felt like
And
it
you're
was
a competitive person, right? So there's
right.
also, I want the win.
Right. So I went right for the win without the preparation, understanding why it is that I wanted to win.
Okay.
So very
Great
important
point.
lesson, and we all have those lessons throughout our careers.
Right. Right. Well, I know you are about to have to leave. I know you have a meeting. So if you want, you can click off here. Again, Renaud Rodrigue, before you do, I want to thank you again for the time. I think it's been extremely helpful to the audience. I hope It's been enjoyable for you. And, any last words before you go?
Yeah, when are we going to get on the ice again?
I'm trying, man. I broke the finger. Did you know I broke the finger?
I did.
Yeah, so I haven't hit the ice since then. It's healing fair, but I think I'm going to go to some stick and puck this week and see how it is. And at that point, I might be actually playing in a game this weekend. So come on down, brother. I'm ready for you. 1-on-1, mano a mano.
All right. Good luck to you, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Rennie. Appreciate it. So that's about it for us, guys. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Rennie. It's been a wonderful experience to be able to bring a friend on that I think can add so much value to this show. As always, if you like what you heard, please show that with a like or share it or comment on it. And as always, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I will be back with you next week with another wonderful guest. And have yourself a wonderful week. Take care.